Hey everyone, welcome. Have you ever heard of a prophecy so detailed, so specific, that it reads like a history book written in advance? Well, today we're diving into exactly that. We're going to crack open the book of Daniel and put it side by side with a really dramatic, really brutal chapter of history. You're not going to believe how closely they match up. So that really leads to this big question, right? Can history actually be written before it happens? I mean, it's a wild thought. But when you look at Daniel chapter 11, you just can't help but ask, are we looking at a genuine glimpse into the future? Or is this just one of the most incredible coincidences of all time? We're about to lay out all the evidence, the prophecy on one side, the history on the other, and you can be the judge. All right, let's set the stage. You've got Alexander the Great, right? This guy conquers the known world. And then he just dies, suddenly. And his massive empire, it basically shatters overnight. His generals, they're like sharks, and they just carve it all up for themselves. Now, for the story we're telling today, we only need to focus on two of these new kingdoms. You've got the Seleucids up in the north, in modern-day Syria, and then you've got the Ptolemies down in the south, in Egypt. And guess who's stuck right in the middle, like the rope in a game of tug-of-war? The small nation of Judea. So here's our game plan. We're going to follow the prophecy's roadmap, step by step. First, we'll look at this world divided that set everything in motion. Then, things get personal with the rise of a contemptible king. After that, we'll see how he held on to power through consolidation by deceit and how that led to a war against the South. And it all culminates in this final dramatic act, rage against the covenant. Let's get into it. Okay, first up, a world divided. And the main thing you gotta understand is that for more than 100 years, Judea was anything but a quiet, peaceful little place. Nope, it was the prize. It was the strategic land bridge that connected these two empires, and both the North and the South were absolutely desperate to control it. And we're not talking about just one war. This was a constant, back and forth, relentless conflict that went on for generations. Can you imagine living in a place that's just a constant battleground for two giants? It's that endless struggle, that exhaustion and chaos that creates the perfect storm for a really ruthless new leader to step in, which, it turns out, is exactly what the prophecy said would happen. All right, so the prophecy kind of zooms in now. It goes from this big picture political scene right down to one single person, and it predicts the arrival of a very specific and, frankly, very sinister kind of king. Listen to the wording here, a vile person. I mean, the text does not pull any punches. It says he's someone to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom. What does that mean? It means he's not the real heir. He's not supposed to be king. And how does he get the job? Not through some big, glorious battle. No, it says he'll come in peaceably and get the kingdom by flatteries. Basically through backroom deals and political scheming. So the big question is, did anyone in history actually fit that bill? And this is where it gets crazy. Check out the history. The actual rightful heir to the Seleucid throne was this young guy Demetrius. But, conveniently for someone else, he was being held as a political hostage way over in Rome. And while he's out of the picture, his uncle, a guy named Antiochus IV, sees his opening. He's the younger brother of the old king, not the heir. But using exactly what the prophecy said, political intrigue and flattery, he just swoops in and takes the throne. It's a perfect match. An illegitimate ruler who got power through scheming. So Antiochus is on the throne, but you can imagine his position is kind of shaky, right? He's a usurper. And guess what? The prophecy keeps going, and it details exactly how he's going to tighten his grip on power. His opponents will be overflown, just swept away like a flood. But then it drops this incredibly specific detail. It says that among those who are broken will be the Prince of the Covenant. Now, that's not some generic title for a king or a general. No, this points to a very specific religious figure, the one in charge of the Jewish people's most sacred traditions. And who was the Prince of the Covenant? Well, that was the title for the Jewish high priest in Jerusalem. The guy holding that job at the time was a man named Onias III. And one of the very first things Antiochus does to lock down his control over the region, he gets rid of Onias, the legitimate high priest, and puts his own corrupt puppet in the job. I mean, that's another bullseye for the prophecy. Okay, so his power at home is now pretty solid. So where does Antiochus look next? To his biggest rival, of course, the kingdom of the south, Egypt. And this is just wild. The prophecy proceeds to lay out his entire military game plan before it ever happened. And just look at this three-step plan. The prophecy says, first, he'll make a deceitful league, a fake alliance. Second, he'll invade the south. And third, he'll scatter the spoils, give away the loot to win friends. Now you look at the history books. What did Antiochus do? Exactly that. He pretended to be an ally to the young Egyptian king, Ptolemy VI. Then he launched this stunning surprise invasion that just rolled over the Egyptian army. And what did he do with all the treasure he plundered? He gave it away to his followers to make sure they stayed loyal. It's just step for step. And get this, the prophecy even gives us a look inside the negotiation room. It says these two kings will sit at one table and speak lies, both trying to pull a fast one on the other. And that perfectly describes what historians tell us about the meetings between the crafty, older Antiochus and the young, inexperienced Ptolemy, who was pretty much being played the whole time. So, the takeaway here is huge. Antiochus comes back from Egypt with great riches, just like the prophecy said. But his victory isn't total. A new superpower, Rome, is flexing its muscles in the Mediterranean and basically tells him to get out of Egypt. So he's forced to turn back. And he is humiliated and absolutely furious. And as he's marching his army home, the prophecy tells us his heart, his rage, turns against something else entirely, the Holy Covenant. And this is where things take a really dark turn. This is the final and, honestly, the most brutal part of this section of the prophecy. All that frustrated ambition, all that humiliation and rage from being kicked out of Egypt, it's all about to be unleashed on one city, Jerusalem. So on his way back from Egypt, instead of just going home, he takes a detour. His victory tour becomes something much, much darker. The prophecy says his heart is now against the Holy Covenant. Now, the Holy Covenant is just another way of describing the special relationship between God and the Jewish people, their laws, their faith, their entire way of life. And Antiochus decides he's going to destroy it. And what he did next it's just horrific. And it's all recorded by historians. He slaughters citizens without mercy. He storms the Holy Temple itself and plunders its treasures. We're talking 1,800 talents of silver. But then it gets even worse. He begins a total persecution. He outlaws the Sabbath. He outlaws circumcision. He forbids people from even keeping Jewish laws. He burns their sacred Torah scrolls. And then, the ultimate insult, the ultimate act of defilement, he builds an altar to Zeus in the temple and sacrifices a pig on the holy altar. It's hard to imagine a more perfect description of what he did than what the prophecy says, that he would prosper for a time by literally casting truth to the ground. I mean, that's exactly what he was trying to do. Through pure violence and blasphemy, he tried to wipe out the Jewish faith completely. And just look at this timeline. This all happened incredibly fast. He seizes the throne in 1750 BC. His first invasion of Egypt is in 170. The very next year, he's plundering the temple in Jerusalem. And by 167 BC, he sets up what becomes known as the Abomination of Desolation. It's just boom, boom, boom. The historical events line up exactly with the sequence laid out in the prophecy. So what's the big takeaway here? This awful persecution foretold in such detail, it wasn't just some random act of a crazy tyrant. It was the direct spark for one of the most famous rebellions in history, the Maccabean Revolt. This is when a small group of Jewish heroes rose up against this massive empire, and their victory, the fact that they took back and rededicated their temple, well, that's the story that's celebrated to this day as Hanukkah. So you have the prophecy, laying out the cause, and history, and even a modern holiday recording the effect. And that brings us right back to our big question at the start. I mean, the parallels between the prophecy in Daniel 11 and the actual history of Antiochus IV, they're just undeniable. So, what do you make of it? Is this proof of some kind of supernatural ability to see the future? Or is it maybe something else? A timeless, chilling warning that the cycles of power, pride, and persecution are just doomed to repeat themselves over and over again? It's a heavy question, and definitely something to think about.